Well, from Amazon's search for its second headquarters to Indiana's near record low unemployment to another record year of economic development at the IEDC. A lot to talk about in the world of economic development in Indiana for 2018. And for a look at some of the highs and some of the lows of the year, let's turn now to national site selection firm KSM Location Advisors CEO Tim Cook and President Katie Culp. Welcome back, as always.
Hi, Gary.
Very active year in the world of economic development in Indiana. No story, I think, attracted more attention than Amazon's search for that HQ2, which it ended up being in two separate locations, New York and Northern Virginia. But that whole process, Indiana made the top 20, seemingly performed pretty well. Your take on that whole Amazon process?
It was the biggest story, not just here. It was the biggest story across the country when they announced their decision. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was writing about it. I think the big story for Indiana was that they made the top 20, gave them bragging rights. I think it gave them a lot to be proud of and can be a platform, if used correctly, to launch into bigger things.
Yeah, Katie, your take on that whole process. Got so much attention, as Tim said, nationally as well as locally, but making the top 20, made a statement, I think. You think, bottom line, it was a positive experience, if you will, for Indianapolis?
Oh, I really do. And not just the national attention, but just having gone through the exercise of trying to put a good sales proposal together and what they learned from that process. And then what I hope happens now is that they get introspective and kind of look at, okay, what works and what do we need to tweak a little bit to be successful as we move forward.
Do you think, as some do, that putting that proposal together and being in the top 20 may showcase Indianapolis and Indiana on a bigger stage at companies that maybe didn't have Indiana on their radar screen before?
There's definitely going to be a trail, kind of a follower effect, and I think that is really positive. But I do think, some of the things that linger that are maybe more on the weakness side than the strength are things we're going to have to grapple with if we want to be successful and fully maximize the timing here with anybody that's interested.
Yeah, I want to talk about that more in a moment, but also another big economic development deal. There were several, the Infosys deal, 2,000 jobs initially, then they added another 1,000 with the creation of this USA training center that's at the old Indianapolis Airport site. So I think the Infosys deal is a big deal. Then you've got the opening up of the old airport too.
It was a great collaboration between the city, the airport, the state, and I think the city deserves a lot of credit. There was a lot of pressure to redevelop that site, to do other things with it. They bided their time. They got a great project out of it, and I think it's going to be a nice springboard to other development in that area.
And how about having this USA Training Center where thousands of people are going to, I think, filter through? That's exposure to Indianapolis for a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't have happened.
I mean, training, I think we're going to hear more and more about that. It's such a critical workforce issue. And I would also say about that whole project, I don't know that the general public appreciates how difficult it is to redevelop airport authority ground. I mean, there are extra layers of bureaucracy inherent in that, and so I think it is an even bigger success than just the jobs and the training center on their own. Yeah,
and could lead to more things down the road, certainly at that location. Some of the disappointments in 2018, as part of the Amazon announcement, they also announced a $238 million investment for a logistics operations center of excellence that went to Nashville. A project that would seem to be really in the sweet spot, the wheelhouse of Indianapolis, but went to Nashville instead.
I think it caught everybody's surprise, one, that project was even in existence, and the fact that Indy did not even get an invite to look at it. I think there's been a lot of attention. What does Indiana need to do differently to compete for something like that? And I think a lot of time should be spent on that.
Katie, your take on that as well?
I'm a little less upset maybe about that loss because I think we need to move on. But what I think we need to do is take that message and channel it into a real strategy instead of just, gosh, we lost it, let's hope we get the next one. And you think back to the years of Lugar being mayor and Unigov developing in the Pan Am Games, I feel like there's an absence of that, and I'd love to see a more modern version of it, perhaps a little more diverse, coming together to develop a really coherent strategy for the future.
Does this underscore the need, as you, I think, and others have suggested, that Indiana needs to attract people to move here? Not just the brain drain and keeping people here and keeping people from colleges and universities, but having people move here.
That is a key part of Indiana's workforce future, is bringing in people, not just nationally, but internationally, having the kind of culture where people feel welcome welcome and invited. It's certainly where corporate America is. You see it with Indiana companies that are pushing for that, and I think it's got to be a focus consistently throughout government and business.
All right, let's talk about 2019 session of the Indiana General Assembly almost upon us here. Some of the big issues impacting economic development. I know hate crimes legislation, Katie, is going to be a big topic.
Yes, and I just hope, I mean, let's just come together and do something that makes sense for economic development. Let's not have another RFRA experience where the corporate America views us as unfriendly to their workers.
You feel as though this is an issue for economic development?
I do. I understand it's divisive for a lot of different reasons in other circles, but at the end of the day, it is going to damage us incredibly if we do not, create some legislation that makes sense for any Hoosier who lives here.
Tim, another big issue a lot of people continue to talk about, as we just did a moment ago, workforce.
Yeah.
And the governor has indicated that's a priority. He wants to continue to focus on initiatives to get everyone working on the same page.
The governor has shown great leadership. He's made it a huge priority. Now we've got to figure out how is the money being spent? What are we funding? Are we coordinating between the different agencies, not just within the state, but locally with federal agencies? We've got to spend time on it. It's the #1 challenge, without a doubt, in economic development.
Only have about 45 seconds. Looking ahead to 2019, do you think the economy is going to remain and the economic development environment is going to remain strong or weak in the year ahead?
I actually think 2019, to me, appears to be poised for a recession. I think we have to watch what happens in transportation, what happens in real estate. If the Fed stops raising interest rates, I think that will be a red flag.
Katie?
I'm a little more optimistic than Debbie Downer over here. I think 2020 will be when we start to see a downturn, but 19 will be strong.
We'll end on a positive note, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Katie Culp and Tim Cook from KSM Location Advisors. As always, thank you. Thanks for a great year. We look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Gary.
Gary.
All right. And I'll be right back after this. Stay with us.